Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports Soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports. Joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. On today's segment, we have a preview of USA versus Colombia, an international pair of friendlies, and we've got two special guests with us to preview these matches. Before we get into everything, a quick reminder to hit subscribe on YouTube for NWSL extended highlights, exclusive interviews, our live recaps, and so much more. YouTube.com/attacking third. Subscribe. It helps us out big time here at A3. We want to welcome our first special guest, an Olympian and former Colombian forward, co-founder of Kickoff Coffee, Melissa Ortiz. How are you doing today? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Sandra. Hi, Lisa. Thank you for the invite. So great to be with you both here. First time. This is my debut on the Attacking Third, which, by the way, I really do appreciate all the work that you guys do because I remember there's been different previews that I've either worked for, on TV or stuff, and I've listened to your guys' previews on, Spotify or wherever. But yeah, so thank you for all the work that you do in the women's game, and it's an honor to be here.
Oh my gosh, that was so sweet, Melissa. Thank you. We were like chatting off mic before, and this like caught me by surprise. Thank you. Right? So sweet. We are so pumped to have you on here. I like follow you on Instagram. I've drank your coffee before. I'm like all over this side of the soccer side of the world and the broadcaster side of the world. And when you said you would come on, I was so hyped. I texted Sandra. I was like, we got Melissa. Like, let's go. Let's talk soccer. Let's talk Colombian soccer. So thanks for joining us. We are hyped to talk about this. And we've got a pair of friendlies. Like, heck yeah. This is great.
It's always nice to do this because I feel like for a lot of us in the space, like so many of us are maybe like mutuals and like we follow each other's work, but then like you finally get the opportunity to like sit and work and collaborate with each other. It's always nice when that kind of comes to fruition. We're here together because we're combining our United States Women's National Team hour with the fact that they're going up against Colombia. So let's just hop into it. Friendly preview of these two matches. The games will be taking place on June 25th and June 28th. The first happening on Saturday, June 25th in Commerce City, Colorado, Dick's Sporting Goods Park, 5:30 p.m. local time. And then the other on Tuesday, June 28th in Sandy, Utah, Rio Tinto Stadium at 8 p.m. local time. These are the final games for the United States before they enter 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup qualification during the CONCACAF W Championship, which will be taking place right after these friendlies beginning on July 4th through the 18th in Monterrey, Mexico. And Colombia is going to get a chance to go up against the heavy hitter ahead of their Copa America. So a lot on the line, I think, for these two teams in terms of their preparation going into these friendlies against each other. But a little bit about Colombia for people who are unaware. They're currently ranked 26th in the world, ranked number 2 in South America in the CONMEBOL Federation behind Brazil. And these are also their final friendlies to get in before their World Cup qualifiers. Copa America is going to be taking place July 8th through the 30th, and Colombia is hosting as well. So it's going to be 3 nations that directly qualify, with 2 going to the playoff tournament and an Intercontinental Confederation playoff for spots in the 2023 World Cup. So there's a lot of excitement, I think, for both sides of the ball here with these two teams going head to head. They've got bigger things in their sights down the line in terms of what comes after these two friendlies. So, Melissa, I'm going to throw it to you because you're our guest here, and we're going to just start chatting a little bit about this. But I want to ask you, maybe it sort of feels like, I think on paper, when folks maybe look at the record between these two sides, they don't think of a rivalry between Colombia and between the United States, just because it's the U.S. kind of holds the record there with more wins. But this is going to be the 9th and 10th time that these two teams have played each other in their respective programs' histories. But not only that, there's some, there's a recent rivalry, I think, in my head, because it's like there's been some familiarity with these teams in probably closer to the last decade or so, where there's been more opportunities for the two of them to go head to head. And I have to throw it to you first, because within this record, it's a 7-0-1 record. And that means that there was a draw between these two teams. And it was during the 2016 Olympics. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Talk to us about the mindset of a player, you know, on Colombia going up against the United States women's national team.
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. I think for any player, if you're from Colombia, Mexico, even a European nation, to go up against the U.S. it's like a moment in your career that you always kind of dreamed about. So, for instance, like in my experience, when I finally got the opportunity to play my first time against the U.S., it was in the 2012 Olympics. I came off the bench, and I was just like, it was almost a dream come true to just touch the pitch amongst like all of these superstars that you've always watched your entire life, right? So in terms of just the experience in itself, it's an incredible feeling. Now it hits reality when you're like, oh crap, like I gotta play good because this is my rival. These are my idols, you know, or people or women that I've looked up to for so long in the footballing world. But holy crap, I gotta flip the switch and I gotta play because I'm playing to win. You know, like any athlete, you play to win. You go into tackles hard, you give it your all, and you obviously know that you're going against the best team in the world. But at the end of the day, you're representing your country and you're representing yourself and what you do on the pitch. So you kind of forget about all of that at the same time while you're in motion. But for us and for Colombia, it's been a lot about maturity. I got into the national team in 2008, 2009. And the first time we played against the U.S., I will never forget how nervous we were, like completely nervous, and just didn't know. Yes, we knew what to expect, but like it doesn't hit you until you're on the pitch, like I mentioned. Then it's just full on because everyone's so fast, so athletic. And yes, we are also very good, despite the results of 7-0 and 1 against the U.S. But with maturity, as I mentioned, over the past years, it's been more about, how from each game playing against the top nation in the world, can we build off of it? Can we gain more confidence from each time we go against the U.S. women's national team? Yeah, we might lose some games 3-0. Yeah, there have been times where we have lost, I think, 6-0s in friendlies. In times where, we were switching rotations and everything, but it's all been a learning experience for us. And I think most importantly, not just for the players, but for the federation as well, because the federation gets to see, how does U.S. soccer do these friendlies? How do they treat their players? How does it work in the U.S. and how, women's equality and how soccer is in terms of supporting the women's side. So for me, it's more like, okay, cool. That's one thing. Let's focus on our women's team and learn and get a result. But the other thing is, we gotta teach our federation in Colombia how to do things.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so interesting to think about how much the players can learn playing against, right, like idols or superstars. I loved hearing you talk about that. But then also for the federations to learn and for Colombia to come to America and play in these facilities and sold out stadiums with U.S. fans cheering. It's definitely a bit of a change for them. And for the U.S., they're used to that, being at home and doing that. So when they travel and for the CONCACAF W Championship, going to Mexico and playing those games in packed stadiums, not full of Americans, it's a bit of a shock to them. It's like almost that learning curve. Melissa, you mentioned how it was nerve-wracking the first time, but it's having that maturity and that growth and that experience every single time you play a different nation or a different federation. And based on the record, 7-0 and 1, these teams have faced each other recently. However, most recently, the U.S. hosted Colombia right after the pandemic in January 2021 in Orlando, Florida. There was a pair of friendlies there. The U.S. won out on both of those friendlies, but it's almost a year and a half later, not even, and the same teams are playing each other again. Now, they're both friendly, so the competition and the excitement isn't necessarily there as it would be in an Olympic game or a World Cup qualifying game, but having Colombia and the United States play each other so close back to back with the 2 friendlies in January 2021 and now again in June of 2022, is there a familiarity for the Colombians to say, this is the team we're going against, and we just did this, like we just played them a year and a half ago, like now you have more familiarity going into it for this upcoming pair of friendlies?
Yeah, I think there definitely is a familiarity that you mentioned, although I think both teams have had some major changes, a lot of young youth players. So it'll be another moment for these youth players to perhaps share that nerve-wracking feeling just in another system before going to play a big tournament. But I do, well, 2 things I want to touch upon is 1, the rivalry, and 2, the last match days that US and Colombia played off against. We'll start with the rivalry. Let's not forget in the Olympics, it was 2012. I think the rivalry started when Lady Andrade, one of my former teammates, punched Abby Wambach in the face, which because they were going at it all game.
Yeah.
You know, Abby was elbowing Lady and yada 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 and back and forth, and I mean, that was a crazy moment to happen, especially on the world stage. So I think that's what created this rivalry, because I believe soon after that, there was a friendly, or there was, I think the next cycle, there was a World Cup where we faced off against the USA again. And there was that rivalry. Yeah. And I remember, I mean, some of these players that played in the pro leagues took it to heart. With some of my teammates, and they're like, yeah, your teammate punched my teammate, you know. So that's where the rivalry kind of started. Although, you know, US is obviously the favorite to win, there's always still going to be that thing there, you know, especially the veterans. Now, in terms of the last match day in early 2021, that was coming right off the pandemic. You said, like, the timeout completely, no camps, nothing. And my teammates on the Colombian national team arrived to Orlando, I believe it was, and I think like 6 or 8 of them tested positive at that point, like day of the game. And so it was a big mess internally on, you know, who starts, the changes, tactics, everything. So I mean, it's the learning curve, I think, that a lot of these teams have gone through because of COVID and because of the pandemic, which brings us to where we are today of having a versatile squad. And, you know, bringing in youth players to see, okay, you know, if this is what happened a year ago, how can we learn from this and, you know, really utilize not only our veterans, but new players in, so that we can keep on growing our national team and for what's to come in this upcoming generation.
You know, I'm with you on that. I like hearing about sort of framing it that way in terms of the new faces, because that's something that kind of caught my attention as well. Like, yes, we're talking about going up. There's 2 teams that are going head to head that just faced each other in 2021. But even from January 2021 to now, you can actually kind of argue that there's new faces rotated in on both sides of the picture. You know, a huge player that's not going to be available for the U.S. side of things that went up against Colombia in January 2021 was Sam Mewis and Crystal Dunn. These are 2 players who had like key roles in those games back then that are unavailable and
we
not
saw
part of these friendlies.
Kat Macario made her debut for the U.S., scored her first goal. The list is incredibly long of U.S. players: Sam Mewis, Carly Lloyd, Lynn Williams, Julie Ertz, Dahl Kemper, Crystal Dunn, Macario, Krieger, Harris. They were all on that roster.
Not going to be part of this rounds of friendlies. So I'm very curious to sort of see what the dynamic is going to be on the pitch between these, because even though there is maybe that recent familiarity for folks who are watching as an audience or fans or pundits or whoever, that maybe might not be the case between players on the pitch. So I'm excited to maybe see that kind of play out a little bit. Let's maybe with that, let's try to get into the rosters right now for Colombia going into this game. When we're looking at this roster in front of us, the 2022 version of this rivalry now, the next chapter. For you, Melissa, what are some players to watch? You know, maybe some players that you think that audiences should perhaps keep an eye on the pitch between these two friendlies?
Like a true Colombian form, our midfield is usually our strongest. It goes back even to the men's side where, back in the day, El Pibe was the 10, the creative player, where similarly, I think part of our culture and our tactic, we share that similarity in our play. Our key player is Catalina Usme, who is a veteran player, a good friend of mine. And right now she plays for America in Cali in the Colombian Women's Pro League. Surprisingly, she's one of the top players who actually hasn't played overseas. She wanted to stay in Colombia and help be part of the Colombian Pro League and be a major part of it. And so what she can provide is just, one, leadership. Two, she's super technical. She's a lefty, but also incredible with her right foot. So she uses both feet, able to switch the point of attack very easily. Her shots are wicked. This is the player that during the 2016 Olympics against the U.S. women's national team scored the 2 goals against Hope Solo, when Hope Solo, one fumbled one of the free kicks in between her legs, and the other one was a gol olímpico, which is the corner kick. Yep. So this was that player. And, I understand that those were goalkeeping mistakes, but this is how she is, though, even from outside the box. She's able to whip shots from far. So Catalina Usme is definitely one of the key players to watch out for in the midfield. Another one is Leicy Santos, who plays for Atlético de Madrid. And she also in the midfield, but she'll also be able to provide a more quick and attacking style of play. While as Usme, she's able to be creative and hold the ball with her strength. Leicy is more of the quicker player, able to distribute quickly, get involved in the attack with the 9. So Leicy Santos is definitely one of the most, I guess, the top figure on the team for sure at the moment. In the midfield, we also have Daniela Montoya, who's a veteran. She sits back a little bit more defensively. Liana Salazar, also a midfielder. Now, I think on the one striker to really look out for, and she's our promise, is Linda Caicedo. You'll see her. She's petite but fast up top. I believe she must be at this point 18 years old. She's very young, but she has been making strides in the Colombian Women's League. One of the top goal scorers alongside Catalina Usme. And I had already retired before being able to play with Linda. But from what I hear from my friends and my teammates, playing with Linda is incredible. I mean, she has so much future. So they'll definitely be putting her into the rotation. Lastly, I think in terms of goalkeeping, it will be probably up to Sandra Sepulveda, who is usually our most capped goalkeeper, who we've seen in World Cups and Olympics. It'll be either her or Catalina Perez, who played in the last, I believe she played in the last friendlies, but she's also been one of the top goalies. She was in and out of injury over the past year or two, but I think towards the end of her campaign in the last Spanish league, she started playing again. So it'll be interesting though. Just like the US, there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of new faces. There's a lot of youth players, even players that are still playing in youth club that have been called up. 2 Colombian-Americans, similar to myself. One that is playing in the 2nd division in Spain and has been in and out of the Colombian national team over the past year or two. And then another one who is still in the club level, but just signed to start in, I think, this August for Arizona. So she's young.
Yeah, name drop them, Melissa.
Wait. I got it. It's Elexa. Elexa is the one that's playing in Spain. Elexa Bahr. She's playing in Spain for Racing de Santander. And then Angela Barón, and she plays for Kick Soccer Club in the USA, a youth soccer club. But it's going to be an incredible experience for her to be so young. And whether she plays or not, I mean, wow, this for her is going to be a moment in her career that she'll always remember. Especially getting in early. This is a fantastic way to develop players. But we could touch more on what this friendly means too for Colombia, which is crazy to in my opinion, to schedule against the US before the Copa America.
So before we get into that, I love all these names that you mentioned, and thanks for running through all of those, especially the Colombian-Americans, giving them a shout out. There's a lot of young names, right? A lot of young talent on this Colombian roster. So to give them this type of experience going up against the United States and in the United States playing these friendlies, that's huge, and that helps shape them. But there's a lot of names missing on this roster that a lot of fans are surprised about. As myself, when this roster came out, I was definitely surprised about that. So let's talk about some of the names that aren't on this roster, because it's been a topic of conversation and transition in the United States, going from the veterans and their leadership to this newer, younger generation. But with Colombia, Melissa, for you, which are the biggest names that are not on this roster?
Definitely the top two names is one, Natalia Gaitan, who has been the captain in and out since 2005, I believe. She was, or later, she was 15 years old when she joined the national team, and she has always been the leader, even during my time. And she was one of the captains for Sevilla over the past year and has been at Sevilla. Before that, she was 5 years at Valencia. She's the type of player that should be on the squad. Ask me why. I don't know. The other one is Isabela Echeverri, who was also captain at Sevilla. Right now is not renewing her contract. Right now is in trying to, well, they're negotiating to see what team she'll be going to and what league. But this is another player who has played in the World Cup, in the Olympics, played here in the U.S. at the university level, and then went off to Spain to play professionally. That's surprising. And I say this to all of you that are listening, that it's surprising because the press keeps on putting it on Twitter as well in Colombia. You know, where are these two players? Actually, there's two more that are missing. One is Yoreli Rincon, who plays for Sampdoria in Italy. And she also has been a veteran for very many years. And I feel like there's a lot of political reasons behind this and why these players aren't being called up. I don't think the staff or the federation is able to supply an actual legitimate response as to why they're not being called to play in these friendlies in preparation for the Copa America, our World Cup qualifying tournament. And then lastly, Vanessa Cordoba's goalkeeper, played in Mexico in this last season. Very good. Yeah, she definitely should be on the roster as well. But again, like, we also have good goalkeepers. So it's like in any camp, in making any roster, it's always going to be a challenge. The competition is always is tough. But yeah, these players are surprising, especially Gaitan, Echeverri, and Rincon.
Well, so what is the press saying in Colombia for those that aren't keyed in on that on Twitter?
They just keep saying, oh, why aren't these players playing? And they keep saying what is in Spanish, vetadas, which in English, we're trying to figure out their translation for this show, but it's something like, I don't know if it's like, not banned. It's like
timeout.
Yeah, I guess they're
on punishment, maybe. Like, we were like, Melissa and I were like, how would we like translate this into English? But I guess maybe like perhaps we thought maybe like on punishment it could be like kind of something like that. And it's unfortunate, you know. I think you have to bring attention to that because of the type of games that these are, you know. And it's, on the one hand, it's like, oh, it's a pair of friendlies during a June international window, sure, but it's a pair of games against, for at least for Colombia's side of things, it's a pair of games against the #1 ranked team in the world. So that's a huge opportunity right there. And then number two, it's a pair of friendlies before the qualification. It's the Copa America. It's huge. So it's like you have to bring attention to this. So I don't, you know, you have to give credit here to those in the media in Colombia who are trying to bring this up or talk about it a little bit, because it should be something that people are taking notice of. And especially when you're talking about the caliber of players like you're making note of, Melissa, the fact that it is somebody like Gaitan who's been a part of this squad for a very long time, for perhaps, I think for a lot of people, maybe the face at one point. And to not sort of have that leadership and that experience and talent, quite frankly, as part of these types of games or going into Copa America, it's at, putting it politely, it's curious. It's quite curious, I guess, is the polite way to put it. So it's unfortunate to sort of imagine that these type of players are perhaps being, you know, on punishment still, I guess is the English way we're putting it. And I would hope that in something like a Copa America or past that, say Colombia punches their ticket to the World Cup, that these players can start being integrated back into the program and back into the system.
And you mentioned punishment, and I imagine a lot of listeners are like, well, punishment for what? Well, this is speculation, because we can never say why they're not being called up. Is it because of changing up the roster? Is it because of passing the torch from veterans to the youth? Who knows? But it's a little bit obvious in a way that in 2019, when we spoke up against the federation, these were key players in the movement against the federation that literally swept them off their feet, and exposed the truth to many wrongdoings that they had been doing for many years. And it could be that now, we fast forward just a few years later, that they could be potentially paying the price for it, And again, this is speculating, but this happens in many federations. And we look at Mexico with Charlene Corral, who is obviously the top goal scorer of all Mexican League right now, and she's not getting called up to the national team. So there's a lot of political ties that go on, unfortunately. And I just feel terribly, terribly sad for my teammates that are not able to be part of such a monumental moment of hosting a Copa America at home in Colombia after so many, decade of being on the team. But that's a conversation that probably needs to be had at a higher level. And if it ever happens, I hope it does. But it is kind of what it is. So
and just thinking like in the lens of this game too, I know we're talking about like players getting the opportunity to go up against the United States, but there's also an opportunity here to be seen. There's an opportunity here to be looked at by large audiences and in the United States. And with that comes, potential opportunities for new highlights in their reels, for scouting potential. There's all these other things that come with facing the United States women's national team if you're coming from another federation into the United States playing up against this team. And when you sort of couple all those things together with the fact that we're talking about that there are certain big players who are not going to be part of this roster, it's sort of it could be detrimental, I think, for them, for their careers. And it's unfortunate to sort of that we're still talking about this in 2022. It's baffling for me. So I appreciate you sort of talking us through it right now, because it's probably uncomfortable for some people to know that, for our listeners we talk a lot about the United States national team, and we're talking about things like, equality in pay and like a new contract and things like that. Those are things that we're celebrating on Attacking Third. And then it's like, oh, here's an episode where it's like, actually, there's some things that are still going on in other federations and other women's teams. So thank you for sort of talking with us and talking through this. So let me ask you this then. Maybe it's unfair to do this, but I want to bring it up anyway. Well, the last time these two teams played, there were heavier scorelines. They went from a 4-0 to a 6-0. Sepulveda had a big game, stopping a lot of things. I know people are like 4-0, that's a huge scoreline, but it actually could have been worse, believe it or not. I'm thinking back to that game where she came up with a ton of saves. Yes, Samuel's got a hat trick and stuff like that, but facing 22 shots, 11 on target, and Sepulveda was there. It's hard to imagine that could have been a much higher scoreline. So I want to ask, with the team being in camp, do you think that we're going to see similar scorelines? Do you think maybe we might see something more narrow? What's your opinion and what's your take on this team?
Put me on the spot on this one. There's so many change-ups, especially on the U.S. women's national team side, that it will be, I think it will start out as a more level-headed game, but I think that this will be a bigger learning curve for the U.S. for Colombia and all of the new players on the Colombian squad. And to go up against the number one team in the world just speaks of itself. And I will obviously be rooting 100% for Colombia because that's me. But I know that it will be an incredible challenge to keep the scorecard in zero, to keep the net in zero. In Spanish, el arco en cero, the goal in zero. So it'll be an incredible challenge, especially with players that have had an incredible season so far in the NWSL and even in Europe on the U.S. women's national team. I mean, when you play the U.S., they go full out. It's like a one-way road, a highway, and you're really running and defending for your life, which brings me to question, why schedule a game like this against the U.S. women's national team in preparation for Copa America when, the only really bigger, somewhat similar but not similar nation that they'll face off against potentially at some point is Brazil. But apart from that, I would have expected an opponent to be scheduled that would be similar to the way that other South American nations play, whether it would be to schedule a game against Costa Rica or Mexico or so it's surprising me this type of friendly, but again, every friendly is a learning opportunity, and I think the scoreline, U.S. will be expected to score, but don't sleep on Colombia. Right. Many people have slept on Colombia in the past, and I know our record against the U.S. women's national team isn't exactly in favor with 7-0-1, but they slept on us in the Olympics, and we ended up tying the U.S. They slept on us during the World Cup in 2015, and we ended up beating France, who were potentially the top team in the world at the time. So, don't sleep on us. Don't sleep on Colombia.
You heard it here. Don't sleep on Colombia. I love that.
No, I love that too, especially like in big moments like this. You come out and you come ready to play in these types of games, and I love that Colombia is that kind of team. They bring it when the stage gets really bright. They're not intimidated by that, and that's one of always my biggest things that I love about watching this team. So I'm very excited to sort of see these two friendlies and how they go. But before we dip out, I've been drinking my beverages as always during attacking third, and my mug here. I got to ask you about drinking kickoff a coffee. Are you going to be drinking any during these games? And let our audiences know where they can get some kickoff coffee of their own.
Absolutely. I'll actually be on the broadcast as analyst during this match out of LA on Fox. So maybe I'll just have this mug there. There's football and coffee on it. But yeah, this is Kickoff Coffee Co., a coffee brand that I co-founded about 1.5 years ago. And it's coffee around soccer. So it's like the two things that everybody loves, especially those that are listening, most likely. But yeah, you could find us on www.kickoffcoffeeco.com or on Instagram, Kickoff Coffee Co. Essentially, we bridge the two cultures of coffee and football, or coffee and soccer, together using top quality specialty grade coffee, whether it's ground or whole beans, shipped directly to your door. And then the most beautiful part about it is that we donate 10% of our coffee profits to soccer foundations around the world that use soccer as a tool for social development. So we have quite a few offerings in terms of coffee bags. So make sure you check us out, and would love for you guys to also try our incredible coffee. I have it right here. I'm drinking our latest.
What's your favorite one that you guys brew?
Man. So we have one we have the Colombian coffee, which is delicious, but surprisingly, I'm obsessed with our Peruvian single origin one, which is called Match Day. Do I have the bag here? Yeah, and all the drawings are pretty sick. So this is the drawing of the bag. So it's like a father figure or mentor walking a little girl or daughter into a stadium. So it's all these like imagery is very inspiring. We just did a collaboration with Common Goal as well. And we're donating the 10% to the Anti-Racist Project. And it's a dream come true to have a coffee brand that's around soccer that has a give back portion. I feel it's just like three passions all combined in one incredibly delicious cup of coffee.
I love it. I love that. That is amazing. Okay, fine. I'm a coffee obsessive person. I love coffee. So I've got to ask, how do you brew your coffee? Are you a French press, drip coffee? What do you do?
Yeah, so this one that I brewed this morning was a French press. Nice. I like to switch it up. I do a pour over sometimes if I have a little bit more time. This French press is just like easy, use a scale, set the timer or whatever. But because it's summer, I've loved brewing my own cold brew at home. Yes. So I'll grind a bunch of beans and just put it in this gallon mason jar that I have. And then obviously pour the water in there and let it brew for 24 hours. I've really been loving the cold brew this summer, which we're like looking to try to develop some type of cold brew offering, at home cold brew, something kit at some point. But yeah, it takes a lot of time, obviously, like any startup. We have some really cool advisors involved, looking for investors at some point. And yeah, so it's really been such an incredible experience becoming like this entrepreneur alongside my co-founders, who is my brother and his wife. We've bootstrapped this, put in our savings in this baby, and we've gone with it and dancing away. So hopefully it'll bring us to some cool soccer coffee vibes in the future.
Oh, I love that. So kickoffcoffeeco.com, get yourself a cup.
Yeah, everybody, go ahead and get yourself a cup. Get ready to watch Colombia as they face off against the United States. Melissa, thank you so much for being here with us and joining us and chatting all things Colombian soccer. Everybody, stay tuned for the match. Look out for that Leicy Santos brace. I'm going to manifest it. Let's see what happens.